Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rukshan On X on Thursday night. Today's 30th of April. How you all doing? Thanks for joining in. For those of you joining in very early, you must have got the notification. Got some familiar faces already in the comments. Svetka, Montana Meow, Baseline Benny. Good to see you guys again for another night, another show. We've got a few stories to get through tonight as well. I've put it all together. I'll go through that in a little bit, but hope you're all doing well. This is probably the last time that I'm doing Rukshan on X in this particular format. It will change a little bit, I think, over the next week or next few weeks. There's some things happening, some changes going on. But I will be coming to you guys live and doing these shows. I hope you're enjoying them as well. If you're joining for the first time and you're just browsing the internet and you're seeing this dude pop up talking about Rukshan on X, it's a very casual news show, guys, that we do here in Australia. So it's 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. And really, we discuss a lot of Australian news and what's happening in the country. Very casual. Again, I keep making that point over and over. That's because I want to invite people to take part in the conversation. Put your comments there, do your super chats, and that'll lead the conversation as well. But we also touch on stuff that's happening internationally, definitely in the West, the US or the UK, things which are relatable to Australia mostly, unless of course there's some other type of breaking news happening somewhere else around the world. We've got someone here saying Ho Chi Minh. A nod there to Vietnam, perhaps. Yeah, a full show on Vietnam. Montana Meow says, good to see you guys having a bit of fun. The Rookwits are in town, and yes, Vietnam is a taboo topic. We shall not discuss Vietnam, only in a subscriber episode, maybe. Rukshan coming to eggs instead. I don't know what EGGS is, but maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's an insult. I don't mind, because we do have trolls coming on this show as well, joining in in the fun. Look, I don't mind a bit of trolling and a bit of critiquing. It's okay. Anything that's, of course, vulgar or, to the levels of threatening behavior, you might end up with a ban. I'm not censorship heavy. I oppose these type of things, but, there is a decorum that we must try to keep. So I'll kind of go through the topics we're talking about tonight and then spend a bit of time with you guys. If you have any comments, any things that you want to ask me, any questions, we'll talk about that for the next 10 minutes after that, and then get into the show around 9:15, 9:20. So the topics I'm talking about today, it's a mixture of things. So first up, we have the Syrian government saying that the Australians refuse to accept the ISIS brides. Now that sounds like good news. So I haven't really followed that too closely. I'm going to be reading it for the first time with you guys. So let's see if we've actually repelled the ISIS brides and made them a problem for someone else, because they definitely don't belong here in Australia. Now, I know we've taken them in the past and all these kind of stuff that we've talked about, but no, we don't need terrorists in Australia. Next story is going to make a lot of people, especially some of my trolls, maybe a bit more engaged in the conversation. But look, this is India. So Indian Australians or Indian heritage individuals living in Australia, because they might not be citizens, they might be here on a permanent residency, or they might be here as, working visas, whatever it is, different situations. But Indians surpass England as Australia's largest source of migrants. 32% of the population is now born overseas. So Indians have now surpassed the British or the English as the number one dominant migrant group of people born overseas in Australia. So I've got a few things lined up around that discussion. Should be interesting. This one came left of field yesterday. I didn't get to touch this yesterday, and I've been following this story closely. And this is one of Anthony Fauci's. Do you remember Anthony Fauci from the COVID era? One of his lieutenants, right? Let's just call him one of his lieutenants, has been caught up in, I guess, fraud, trying to erase data, trying to hide information, trying to deceive the public as it relates to research, particularly around COVID. Now, we've got to be still a little bit careful, because we're on the platforms like YouTube, and they're still adverse to hearing the truth about these things, because they were actually involved. The censorship industrial complex during those years of the COVID-19 so-called pandemic, they were heavily involved in censoring individuals, and some of that still lingers on, but there are a few more liberties now in the ways that we can discuss this. So definitely touching on that topic. I think that's interesting. New South Wales police facing scrutiny over patrols of Bondi terror attack event. And this is to do with the anti-Semitism interim report that's come out. A lot of mixed reviews on that. A lot of responses from the Jewish community saying, they're not too happy with how it's turned out. Some people are okay with it. Certain politicians have opinions as well. So we're going to look at that. Then we got the flotilla, another one of these flotillas that are on the way to Gaza. I think that's been called the condom flotilla by the Israeli Defense Forces, because maybe there's something more going on in that flotilla. So we'll look at that story because it's been seized. I don't know what these people are thinking half the time when they try these things. It's obviously all stunts, and it's been dealt with, I think, appropriately. Tragic story coming out of Australia, and that is the death of that child that was, found. She was missing for a few days. People were frantically looking for her. There was a lot of attention on this. We had our leaders talking about this, but now a body has been found, and there's a suspect or an individual that's being sought around this. I'll briefly look at that because I feel like it's one of these topics that it is very tragic. And at the start of this topic, it's really around finding this child. But as this progresses, it's going to become a topic of debate in the sense of, the response maybe, or what happened, the breakdown within, who's responsible for this issue, because it obviously involves a vulnerable Indigenous child. Then back to Victoria, we have another violent crime. We'll look at that as well. That's stabbing in a coffee. While waiting for a coffee, a paramedic was stabbed, which is insane. And another blast from the past, Anastasia Palaszczuk, the previous premier of Queensland, her now boyfriend's house has been raided. So what's that all about? Okay, what's that all about? And she was, of course, not a favorite of many of us who were against her dictatorial regime during those years. So we'll definitely have a look at that, whatever happens tonight. Then I got Erica Kirk's response. So if we have time, we'll get to these stories. Erica Kirk actually responded to Candace Owens and a lot of her critics, and just the state of things in the US as it relates to political violence. Now, she was caught up in the White House Correspondents' Dinner attack that took place, and there was video of her leaving, very shaken up. Of course, her late husband, Charlie Kirk, very much so a part of this story in the way that his untimely assassination death has caused very many ripples within the conservative Republican movement as people try to piece things together. So we'll look at that. It goes for a few minutes. Hopefully we have enough time and we get to that 11 o'clock, just the right time, I think, to finish up around 11. But we could go over. If it's going good, we'll go over. And last up, I wrote here the woke website, but maybe we'll start with this story because this was pretty funny. I was like, what is going on with these woke websites? We'll look at that first. Someone saying in the comments, a depressing list, no good news. Oh, well, look, I mean, generally the news that we discuss when it comes to politics, I wouldn't say it's depressing, but it's things that we have to talk about. Obviously, it's, very bleak, the world at the moment, even in Australia. There's many issues that we're facing, and even politics that goes into all of that. It tends to be quite confrontational, quite bleak. I wish I could do a fun show. Maybe maybe we'll break up the show with a fun segment of similar to what maybe Sky News or Rita Panahi does with lefties losing it. Maybe we'll just watch left-wing people losing their minds. That always seems to cheer me up. What about you? All right, guys, let's get to your comments and then we'll come back to the stories. Let's see who's joined in tonight. Mus, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Great to see you here again. Leo, good to see you again, mate. Jumping on YouTube. Thank you. Glenn says, hey, mate, just watched your interview with Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party. Awesome. Yeah, that was a cool interview to do. No planning, obviously, me and Avi when we do these things, but it was a lot of fun to do that at the footy club there in Sorrento. That was good fun. We'll just get this as a statement here from the Australian. Australia is being controlled by forces that do not consider the future generations' well-being. We must unite and work together for all Australian future hopes and dreams. Great statement. I think, I agree with that very much. But the issue tends to be that not everyone is on the same page. So when you say we, maybe people watching this show, myself and others of our ilk would agree with you and would want to work for this. Like I truly believe in that. But there's many others in this country that are opposed to this, and they see anyone attempting to do that as being radical or extremist. Like that's kind of where we are as a country, right? Baseline Benny says sex boat party. That might be relating to the flotilla. So we'll get to the flotilla. That's there's a lot going on there. And we got Maconomics joining in. Good to see you, Maconomics. Thanks for joining in again. And Darren says, what page is BlackRock on? A bit of mystery. All right, guys, let's just jump straight into it. We're going to go first to the Woke website. Let me just click on this link. I'm going to click on this link. This takes you to a website on the... we'll just go to the Twitter post first. So I don't know this individual, but his name is Miles Brundage, and he says, I've heard land acknowledgement statements before, not as often as Twitter would make it seem, maybe like once, but I've never seen a land acknowledgement button. So apparently the Australian National University website, some parts of their website, before you can access the website or use the website, or just when you first get to the website, they make you press a button to say you acknowledge that you are on Aboriginal land. Now, I thought this was a joke. I thought it was a prank. I mean, of course, we discuss the welcome to country and the controversies around that and the debate around that. And I get it. And I've seen before on websites, at the bottom of the website, they've got the different flags. And, they've got the Aboriginal flag, the LGBTQIA plus flag, the trans flag. They have the flags. Only thing that's missing, obviously, most times is the Australian flag. But I haven't really seen this acknowledgement that pops up the first thing when you go to a website. So I didn't think it was real. But then you go to one of their sites, for instance, this one. Let's have a look. Bang. First thing you see. It's a web server. I'm pretty sure this web server is probably somewhere in Singapore, right? Or, hosted in Australia somewhere maybe. But it's on the internet. But it says you are on Aboriginal land. That's the first thing you see when you get to this website. No kidding. I'm just going to make this bigger. Let's make it bigger. You are on Aboriginal land. We've all seen the cookie acceptance, but it tells you, I acknowledge. So let's read what it says. The Australian National University acknowledges, celebrates, and pays our respects to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people of the Canberra region and to all First Nations Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and work as the oldest continuing culture and knowledges in human history. Massive statement there. I think a lot of this is overinflated. The way that they put this mythos together about the oldest continuing culture. See the word continuing in there? And knowledges in human history. Interesting. I would think that other knowledges in human history perhaps predate this, but it's not continuing knowledges. You know what I mean? They advanced to certain degrees. And I'm not saying this as a slight. I'm just not acknowledging this page, but definitely there's some wordplay happening here. So I will not click I acknowledge. I refuse to click I acknowledge. I don't know why this thing pops up first. I thought it was a joke, but it's actually a real thing on the Australian National University website. So thankfully I found you can ignore it and just click off the screen and it goes away. So that's how I wanted to start the show. I wanted to show you guys that this was happening. We've gone from the welcome to country, the acknowledgement of land at the Anzac Days. And now when we go to our websites, it tells you acknowledge this land as Aboriginal land. It's just work. And I actually did a stint at ANU when I was doing political science degree that I didn't finish either, just like my law degree. And I remember the first course that we had to do, the first unit, is on Aboriginal studies, and it's full of all this kind of work things. So I think ANU is very much a part of pushing this woke leftist agenda and rewriting, or what do we call it in America, critical race theory type nonsense that we see. Anyway, moving on to the news. The first story I have, guys, is the Syrian government says Australians refuse to accept the ISIS bride. So let's pull up that article and have a look at what Albanese or the Australian government has done. A group of Australian ISIS brides and children are stuck in Syria because Australia has refused their return, Damascus has claimed. 4 Australian women and 9 children left the Al Roj detention camp in northeastern Syria last week and reportedly completed a more than 500-kilometre journey to Damascus with intentions to fly home to Australia. At the time, a camp official suggested that families were expected to wait 72 hours before boarding planes to Australia. In response to an inquiry about the women's current status, the Syrian Ministry of Information said foreign affairs officials were informed Australia would not take the women. The foreign minister was informed the Australian government had refused to receive them after the families first left the camp, the information ministry told Associated Press. These families are still awaiting a solution, which can only be achieved through coordination with relevant international parties, it said. I think that we already have the solution. This is the solution. We don't want them back. The Syrians can deal with it, or someone in the region that is amicable to the ISIS terrorism, that perhaps supports ISIS terrorism. There's many in the region that do. They can take in these women. They don't need to come to Australia. The Syrian Information Ministry understood the families obtained passwords through a lawyer and delivered by an individual that it would not identify. Who is this individual that won't identify? We might have a clue about it. I won't go into it. And how did they obtain passports while sitting in a Syrian detention center as ISIS brides? Right? How does it happen? Obviously, there's some coordination happening from the passport office and the government more so. You can't just get an Australian passport that easily, especially in these circumstances, right? They're not just going to willy-nilly make these passports for individuals in this situation. Like, where are they going to, where's the AUS post at the ISIS detention camps in Syria? Where's the Australia post where you got to get the passport photo taken? Who's doing that? So all these questions, of course, we've talked about and asked in the past, but it's all coming into play now as their impending arrival in Australia was being discussed. It looks like the government, at least for now, has refused them, which is a good thing, in my opinion. It comes as confusion surrounds the movement of the ISIS-linked women and their families. Government has repeatedly denied to confirm nor oppose reports the cohort had secured airline tickets to return to Australia. Instead, senior officials, including the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Penny Wong, have insisted they are not providing official assistance. We are providing no support for the repatriation and no assistance to these people, PM Anthony Albanese said on Wednesday. The press pack in Beijing put reports stemming from the Syrian government to the foreign ministry after she held bilateral talks with China. She was asked if there was any possibility the Australian government was going to allow the women and children to come back or if they would remain indefinitely in Syria. She said the government had made its position in relation to these individuals very clear. We are not assisting in their repatriation. And at least for now, credit where credit's due, it looks like Anthony Albanese's Labor government is not participating in this. Now, this could all be a ruse. This could just be for good press. This could be like we tried to stop them. You can see a potential possibility that some leftist group or think tank on the left puts together some sort of high court challenge and gets these people over here. Like that's insane. That's the kind of country we live in, where we advocate to save people who are terrorists, ISIS brides, and their ISIS spawn. Home Affairs has contacted for comment. It comes as speculation has surrounded the whereabouts of the women and the children. The cohort has reportedly secured documentation to travel, including air tickets, although it is not known when they plan to arrive. The government has refused to confirm any possible travel plans. Some have theorized the cohort fear they could be met with criminal charges upon return to Australia. I mean, it should be default that they will, if they do, and they shouldn't, but if they do make it onto our shores here in Australia, they should be immediately arrested, put into some sort of maximum security facility, awaiting their deportation to some ISIS, loving nation around the world. Because there are plenty that they could go to. I don't know why they want to come to the safety of the country that they wish to terrorize at one point, the country they hated so much. Why don't they go and live their peaceful ISIS life in some nation that supports their cause? Let me know what you think in the comments. I think got credit where credit's due to the Albanese government for now, for at least not cooperating with this particular scheme to get them here. I have no sympathy for terrorists, and People say I'm heartless. People say I'm heartless for calling the kids ISIS spawn. I've seen the pictures of these kids holding up heads and the ideology that they have most likely been, pushed onto them from a very young age. These are all dangerous people. We don't know if these kids will one day terrorize Australia and blow something up here for revenge for their fathers or whatever it is. Like, we don't need this. There's absolutely no necessary requirement whatsoever to have ISIS brides in this country. Full stop. Let's see what a left-wing paper says. So we've got the conversation here. So they're pretty much left. Let's say what they say. Albanese is prioritizing policies over responsible handling of ISIS families, setting a dangerous precedent. 13 Australian women and children linked to ISIS have reportedly been... Okay, we know all this. Let's see what they're saying. Stage disengagement. At first glance, the latest case may appear to resemble an independent return. This means the women and children left the detention camps to try to return to Australia outside formal repatriation frameworks. There have been rare precedents elsewhere. In the UK, Tarina Shakil famously arranged her own escape from ISIS-controlled territory in Syria and returned without government extraction. Similar cases occurred in Europe in the early years of the Syrian conflict. But what's happening with Australian women and children is different. They are not simply trying to escape on their own. They are attempting to return through complex and often opaque pathways facilitated by a combination of local authorities, informal networks, and pre-existing administrative processes. That's what it feels like to me. Like, I feel like the Albanese government was essentially trying to get these people in secret, and they arranged for these documents, they arranged for these passports. There was all these other third parties involved, and there's a complex network of individuals working to get all these women the passports and all these kids passports to come to Australia. And then when the pressure built up on Albanese, now he's pivoted because of the public pressure around this and the impact that this is happening perhaps on their polling, perhaps it's helping other parties, whatever. Like, it could be any number of reasons. And they've now changed their tune. Let's just keep reading. I'll just skip a little bit. Now, however, the government is taking a hands-off approach until a return is already underway or inevitable. Only then is issuing travel documents or processing individuals once they arrive. This creates what might be described as a form of stage disengagement. The state withdraws from politically sensitive act of bringing people home and instead threaten legal action if the women and children return. Any real action is deferred until the group is actually on a plane. I mean, yeah, this could be exactly what's happening here. Albanese is kind of doing the whole, I guess, the Pontius Pilate thing, in a way, trying to wash his hands of everything, and he's doing both in a way, right? Something like this is happening. I'm giving credit to Albanese because they've been strong on this for now, but I feel like we're going to end up some form or another, these ISIS brides stepping foot in Australia. That's my thoughts on that story. Let's see what your comments have, and I'll tell you what I think of them. Let's have a look. This is Baseline going back to the woke Aboriginal website that asked for you to acknowledge the country before you could access the website. The server is on Aboriginal land. Yeah, it might be in Naarm somewhere. We got someone here who's very skeptical of the government. I don't believe this story about the government stopping them. It could be a ruse for sure. Montana Mio is also not convinced. I'm not convinced about this. I feel it's publicity stunt and somehow they'll end up back in Australia for sure. Yitrig Yak says, well, we let plenty of Israelis in, and as they should also be charged with single crimes, but nothing to see here. I don't know if any Israelis that have left Australia to go fight for a terrorist cause against Australia and the West, per se. Like, I mean, there's nothing like that happening. I understand you might have certain views about Israelis or Jews or the IDF, but none of it relates to anything that is against the law here in Australia. Whereas those in the ISIS brides, the ones that left to join ISIS and other terror networks, were definitely against our national security and against our national interests, for sure. look into how many ISIS brides are white Australians. I mean, I've seen even from the UK and the US, a lot of these brides that went over, they weren't necessarily of a Muslim or Islamic background. They were actually, some of them were white people from those countries. Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. And Susie, great point. They want to get our government handouts. That's why they came here. We're idiots and they know it. Yeah, the kids are going to end up on extreme welfare. These women are going to get the kid gloves put on. The government's acting tough now, but once they're here and all the bleeding heart human rights lefties get involved, these women could end up with massive payouts or something from the Australia. We could be paying for them extra because they're terrorists. This is the eventual outcome of what happens in countries like Australia when it relates to these type of issues, because of all the bleeding hearts that don't seem to understand that these people are terrorists and they brought this punishment onto themselves. And the only way that you can stop this becoming normalized in your part of the world, in your countries, is to set a firm and strong message to people that want to do that in the future, but also people with certain thoughts about becoming terrorists here and attacking us domestically. They should know that this country has a firm stance against this. Spetsy, good point here. They're scared of one nation's momentum. Definitely the conversation in this country, especially since the Bondi terror attack, which we'll look at as well later in the show, has changed the conversation when it comes to these type of issues. And it's a problem for the government. When we're talking about national security and then the government, and it's an issue and we have issues with immigration, and at the same time, the government is facilitating access to Australia for terrorists from ISIS brides, right? It's a problem for the Labor government right now, politically. All right, guys, so let's keep going to the next story. We'll get a move on today. We won't spend too much time with me pontificating about different things. India surpasses England as Australia's largest source of migrants. 32% of the population are born overseas. Let's have a look at this. It's from the Daily Mail. Landmark shift as India overtakes England to become Australia's biggest source of migrants, with 30% of the population now born overseas. For the first time, English people are no longer Australia's top source of migrants, with nearly a third of the population was born overseas. New Australian Bureau of Statistics ABS data has revealed people born in India now make up the largest number of Australian residents born in a different country. The statistics also show that 8.83 million people out of the population of 27.6 million were born overseas, or 32%, which is a high percentage of people born overseas. Of those 8.83 million migrants, nearly a million were born in India, slightly more than the 950,000 than the number born in England. The last time there were so many overseas born people living in Australia as a percentage of the population was in 1891, which was due to the gold rush era migration. Australia's population has been growing steadily since World War II and grew by 3.8 million during the past decade. English migration to Australia peaked in 2013 with more than 1 million people migrating. It has been falling slowly since. Chinese-born people are the third largest group of non-Australian-born residents, with 732,000 people, which is its peak. So, between the Chinese individuals and the Indian individuals here in Australia now, you're looking at a massive population of a foreign-born or of a different ethnicity compared to traditional migration to Australia by the English. So that's the shift that's happened. It's easy to you got the beach, and then you got the Indians at the cricket, and you got this, probably the cricket as well. New Zealand migrants increased from 608,000 to 220 in 2024 to 638,000 in 2025 to come in fourth, followed by people from the Philippines. I didn't expect that. Who rounded out the top five. The figure from the Philippines has doubled in the past decade, while there's an increasing number of Vietnamese, South African, Nepalese, Sri Lankan, and Malaysian people making up the migrant numbers. The ABS figures also found that the average age for Australia's overseas-born population was 43, which is down from 46 in 2005. The median age of the Australian-born population is 35, up from 33 in 2005. So look, I'm not going to read any more of that, but clearly a big shift. It's a news story that I've seen covered in newspapers around the world as well, because this topic of migration is a topic in most Western countries. And it all kind of touches on the fact that, white Australians or English Australians or traditional Australians, however you want to put it, the framing in some circles within the right, it's a form of population replacement, or the great replacement, some people will say. And this is all done on purpose. These kind of things are floating around. Now, again, what we've seen Australia, especially over the last 2 years, is that, Indian migrants especially are now the targets of many of these campaigns against migration. They are portrayed as a problem. They are portrayed as the cause of a lot of issues now when it relates to housing, jobs, things like this. Not so much crime. In the statistics, they don't really bear out in the crime statistics. If you look at it, it's opposite actually. They're the least represented amongst certain migrant groups. But, it is the one that's at the top right now. So it makes sense that when people are talking about migration, that this particular group is picked on at the moment. It's not nice. I get called all sorts of things all the time as well. And, I didn't really have a say in any of this, how I ended up here in Australia. But I somewhat understand people's frustrations when they see the country changing. And it's not so much because people are coming from different countries and, there's more of them. I think there's that aspect, obviously, for some people. But it's also the fact that there's people now not assimilating or integrating at all within Australian culture. And that really brings this to the surface because it's very noticeable then. And you go around and you see places and it's like, are you in Malaysia? Are you in Singapore? Are you in Mumbai? This is very different to the Australia that I grew up in. And I can even say that as someone that grew up in the 90s, there wasn't very many people. Like I would go somewhere in the city or something. Not everyone looked like me. But today, it's very different. And many places are being completely changed in terms of the businesses that are there. And it would be a culture shock for some people as well. Like typically you expect there to be a culture shock if someone comes from overseas and lands in a new country and they're like, oh, this is a new culture. It's a culture shock. But now the reverse is true sometimes. Immigrants come to Australia and they're like, oh, this is our culture because everything is like, there's no need to learn English. There's no need to do anything. I'm with the people that I'm familiar with. They speak in the language. The services are all the same. The businesses are all in the same language. And it's a culture shock now for, white Australians that may have grown up in a different era when they see what's happening around them. And they go to a suburb and it's like, well, where am I? Is this the same suburb that we grew up in? So there is that culture shock taking place. Like you can't deny that that's happening. And I don't think it's racist to try to confront those issues as well and discuss what those broader implications are of something like this happening. Because there's already no-go zones, really, in parts of Sydney. There's some suburbs that you wouldn't probably necessarily feel comfortable in because it's changed so much. It's like enclaves. It's not so much, I haven't really noticed that too badly here in Victoria. I can definitely see a few suburbs which are kind of like enclaves. And, it's always kind of been like that with different groups of migrants throughout Australia's history. But now it's even more pronounced. And at the same time, you add to the mix the crime that we see in some parts of some of our states like Victoria. Definitely, it makes people uncomfortable. But we have to discuss it. It's not racist to discuss it. It is very much about the future of this country. These things need to be understood because there's ramifications that come with this. And the ramifications are in not addressing the cultural implications of this dramatic shift that's happening. So let's have a look at some more data related to this. We have a post here from Drew. He says, breaking news. For the first time since European settlement of Australia began in 1788, the largest single foreign-born group in Australia is non-British. After nearly 230 years, India is now the largest country of birth for overseas-born Australian residents, displanting the English. Let's have a look at this graph here. this chart. Let's have a look. I'll just play it from the start. All right, let's turn that music off. But you can see there, you got England, migrants from New Zealand. China has a peak, then India comes in, and then it really caught up there. Out of nowhere, really. It's pretty much this English migration, New Zealand migration, Chinese coming up in the 2015, 2016, yeah. And then bang. So, look, when so my family arrived in Australia way before this, right? And you can't even see on this at the moment when, like, you know, I'm not from India, but Sri Lanka, similar thing. So prior to 1996, right, I'm just talking about my experience here. When my parents arrived in Australia, was around 1990, right? So India wasn't even on this equation. Right? It was a very rare thing. So that's what I mean. So when I was growing up in Australia in the 90s, it wasn't very, like, even for me, I can see the difference. I can see the difference is what I'm trying to say. And then it you know, obviously, I think it was around, where was that? I'll just go back a little bit. It was around 2000, the year 2000. You see the Indians storming in here, and then bang. They are now dominating. So we have India, China, Philippines, Vietnam. Even when we see today, New Zealand, for instance, a lot of New Zealanders that come here, so because they have immigration to New Zealand as well. I know a lot of people with Indian heritage or Sri Lankan heritage that are Kiwis, New Zealanders, New Zealand passport citizens, but they're then migrating to Australia. So those figures don't really capture those ethnic varieties that we get, even with the British, even people that are coming from England now that might have English passports or be English citizens. They will be of an Indian heritage, perhaps, because even in those countries, the demographics have shifted. But look, I think this is an important conversation to have, for sure. It doesn't have to be racist. It needs to be discussed as it impacts the culture of this country if we don't address certain issues that arise from this. Okay, I'm just trying to be very clear about that it's okay to discuss it. Let's have a look at this news story around this.
Australia is now home to more people born in India than any overseas nation. As Isabel Quinlan discovered, education and affordable housing are driving factors in the population boom.
There are many things Deepan Kohler loves about Australia.
David Warner is my best cricketer, not Virat Kohli.
But one of the best parts since he migrated in 2014 as a student,
The community is very welcoming. They give us the opportunity.
Opportunities that led to opening several businesses, including Ghee Good Indian restaurant in Tarneet.
Indians are my family, so I can give the best taste of India to the local community who is coming from India.
For the first time on record, more Australian migrants were born in India than anywhere else in the world. New ABS data shows in 2025, almost 1 million people born in India now call Australia home, overtaking England by just 70 people, then followed by China and New Zealand. Victoria has the largest Indian population in the nation, with more than 270,000 migrants living here.
India is also one of the countries where there's an increasing urban middle class, and there is more people who want to go study abroad, and that's why we are seeing that rise.
Since 2022, immigration has surged by almost 5% year on year, driven largely by skilled workers and students. But experts say numbers will stabilise.
We are now seeing a more sustainable and lower growth.
And I'm thankful to Australia.
Isabel Quinlan, 9 News.
So let's get to your comments, and I'll answer some of your comments as well on this. Again, it's a very interesting topic. It's one that I talk about a lot, but obviously people look at it when I'm speaking about this issue, and they're like, "Well, Rukshan, like you are a part of the problem," and I get kind of why people say that as well. But as I try to demonstrate in that video that we saw with the statistics, This is a very different problem to like skilled migrants coming to Australia in the 90s. Now, of course, there's people that oppose that as well. But what we're seeing today is very different. It's very different. Let's have a look at the comments. Montemio says, I really do feel like a minority in Melbourne. Somebody makes a decision to import them. The CBD is now a foreign language district. So this is why I can smell curry cooking in every third house on my street. And Druby said, it's a part of the trade deal. They take our coal and food. We take their excess people, students. Look, there's definitely deals done in terms of migration. And there's also the factor that a lot of the Australian universities, this is their business. So they advocate for this at the very highest of levels, the universities. They don't want to stop the tap on this, right? And it's very unlikely that these students would take up degrees to just do them online. A part of them taking degrees is, again, coming to the country. A lot of them look at it as a pathway to residency or citizenship in another country for work purposes. So they would be more reluctant to do a university degree online per se. They would go to a different country that offers that. And there's many countries offering those kind of opportunities for individuals because there's businesses. Universities are essentially businesses. They're trying to make money and they're pushing for more of this, right? In the background, they've been doing this. And there's other industries as well. Obviously, the government uses migration to try to cover up some of their financial woes, right? They find it as a way to do that. And, you know, Australia's place in the world, we are only 27 million people now. Again, we're being stretched at the seams because of the way that our systems are set up. Obviously, that even with such a low population, in such a big landmass, we're struggling to provide housing and so forth. So, are these things being calculated and planned in a way that's sustainable? And it doesn't feel like that to me, at least. And it causes problems. It's not great for the migrants that are coming here. It's not great for the people that are already here, the citizens. It's not great for people that have ties to the the foundations of Australia. Those Australians, as well as Indigenous Australians, might be affected by this in how they see this new wave of migration, right? They have a problem with the settlement of Australia. They might have a problem with now some might argue the resettlement of Australia by a new group of individuals. And it's like a hybrid group of Chinese and Australians. That's why I keep saying Malaysia and Singapore. It feels like that. The future, like when you have this much of a population displacement with these type of races and ethnicities coming in over a long period of time, it will have an impact on the cultural aspects of a country, as well as, like you've mentioned, some of you in the comments, that shift you're seeing in the major capital cities like Melbourne and certain suburbs, and that can spread everywhere. And then these are then become the individuals who are in positions of leadership. They're in different councils. They are now policymakers. They're in the judiciary. They're in the laws. Like, you have to understand, Chinese Australians, Indian Australians, most of them, especially the children of migrants that grow up here, they most of them go into higher education, and most of them take up professional jobs in professional sectors, and they have aspirations of taking the highest professional jobs anywhere they can. Like, that's kind of the motivation for many migrants. I've gone through that myself in my community. That's how I ended up at law school. Not because I necessarily wanted to be a lawyer. Like, it's just the mentality of how you grow up, having this kind of education first focus pushed on you as a child, and you end up in this area. So some people actually embrace that, is what I'm trying to say. And that's how you end up with a racial discrimination commissioner who is of Indian background or Sri Lankan background or whatever it is. And that's all a part of the changes that you see happening around you. So can you vote your way out of what's happening? Potentially. You can obviously vote for parties like One Nation and other parties that have a more rounded immigration policy that's against mass immigration, and that might stem the flow of this issue becoming larger and larger. But the left-wing parties, Labour and the Greens, the ones that are really, hold all the cards right now, they are for this. They are for infinity mass immigration. It is their voter base. They're literally importing more voters. A lot of these people might be pushed into grievance politics. They might be pushed into becoming victims. I talk about this at length. You can watch multiple episodes where I go on about this, but there is a political agenda here as well that's been happening when it comes to demographic shifts, and it suits a certain political ideology, right? So there's solutions to this. I believe there's solutions to all of this, and it doesn't have to always just be about immigration policy. There's other ways to deal with this type of issue as well in terms of education and, even just for migrants to understand that more migration to a country actually is a detriment to the country that they are now in. Like, you don't want to leave behind all that bad stuff and then bring it all here and then just recreate the same thing. Because that's kind of what's happening, in my humble opinion. Let's see what your comments say, and then we'll go through the next topic. Dragon says, my community is exactly the problem. Right, yeah, I can see what you're trying to say. Alvin says, Rook is not an Indian, he is Pakistani. Look, I'm Sri Lankan, but technically, until the partition happened in India, when the British left in India, there was no such thing as Pakistan. Like, Pakistan, India, it's the same plain place. It's like if someone, today split up, Victoria and New South Wales, and the people in New South Wales call themselves something else. It's essentially all Indians. Like, I know they get offended by it when you speak about it like this, but that was created. That's a very recent thing. That's been there. These people have been intermixed in that area, and even the Sri Lankans at some point were a part of various Indian empires. Indian empires came all the way towards Indonesia. That's why if you go to Bali, in Bali they're Hindu. It's because of that influence before the Islamic changes happened in that part of the world. So it's a very complex history. You could say there's certain similarities between these groups of people. It's how we identify as nationalities or as countries. That's what I mean. Like, borders change, countries change. India and Pakistan is one great example of that. It's very recent. I would say it's pretty much the same people, but people get offended by that. Maconomics says Indians are relatively low migrant group. Turn the music down at the night and have more showers and they can stay. South Asians get too much crap. We allow worse people in, that's for sure. Yeah, crime-wise in Australia, it's they're not overly represented in any statistics. What they are known for, though, is one of my pet peeves, is scamming, and that's from India itself. And then some of these traits can now be found in Australia as well, and that's the problem. They're not really. I guess you can have every culture, every ethnicity has certain issues, for sure. But there is definitely an issue in India with highly educated people being involved in scams and in call centers, and that goes to the levels of poverty and the lack of opportunities there for the younger generation. But that's changing as well. We will get to a point where there will be less people inclined to leave countries like that in the developing world, or even India is pretty developed depending on where you are. But there is also, I've seen the Indian government itself, they're open to the idea of sending their youth out across the world and having them, in other countries as a part of those countries, because they feel like in the future, when you have people who are of that heritage in positions of leadership and positions of power, it then becomes more advantageous to the Indian nation. And India is a growing superpower. Like, if you're looking at the world superpowers, you're looking at America, China, Russia, and India. Like, India's up there as a major country. They're starting to develop products. They start doing a lot of manufacturing now. They're trying to take away business from China. They're more amicable again to the West because of the history with Britain, and it's a part of the Commonwealth. So these things position India in the future to be a place that has great influence, and they would very much like other parts of the world, especially the West, to have people there of that heritage that they can do business with in the future. So there's a bit of that going on as well, for sure. Mark Badger says, hey, Rukshan, Fernando, why do you block posts that don't agree with your agenda? Same as your non-Aussie mate, Abraham Shalom Yemeni. I don't block posts. If you're commenting on Facebook, Facebook is very known for blocking certain words or certain language or certain emojis. It's all automatic usually. So especially in the comments here, you can see people write all sorts of stuff to me. Like, I'm not blocking stuff. But if you put certain trigger words in Facebook, there's heavy moderation just automatically built in through their AI. Facebook is not the place to have whatever conversation you want to have. You will get tagged, and usually they hide these comments. Now, sometimes I'll go to a post that I've put up and there's 100 hidden comments. I don't have the time to go through them and unhide them. I don't have that time. I'm just going day to day and doing my work. Susan, I'll read your comment. You say, I'm concerned about a particular race of people who have little, if any, respect for women. I live in Dandenong in Melbourne for years, but I've had to move away because of the disrespect shown to women, particularly white women. I was looked upon as if I shouldn't be on the streets, my own streets. This is how these enclaves are formed, and to my mind, it's intentional. Yeah, it's very problematic, and that really comes from lack of integration and assimilation. And I know the government say that people are integrating and they can have their own cultures, but assimilation is very important. Like, understanding the cultural aspects of a country is very important. But it's just lacking now. When my parents migrated to Australia, they were just very respectful. I wouldn't say they were scared, but they were like, there's a certain way that things happen in this country. And, when I went to school, primary school, grade 1, whatever, grade 2, grade 3, all those years, I learned about Australia. My neighbors taught me about Australia. The people I was interacting with me taught me about Australia. There was no woke stuff going on. We sang the national anthem every morning. In primary school, at the morning assembly, we sang the national anthem. We learned about, football, and I was introduced to footy when I was a little kid, and we had footy days and all. Maybe that's not happening as much anymore at schools, and kids are being indoctrinated, and young kids are, being taught a different history. They're being taught woke histories. There was a time, and it might be still happening. I haven't looked into this recently. They're trying to convince little boys that they're girls and little girls that they're boys. This is what our woke leftist government that is not interested in assimilation is focused on these days in countries like Australia. So yes, Susan, I understand what you're saying. And, there's people coming in now that have no resemblance of any aspect of the decorum that's required to live peacefully and harmoniously in these countries like Australia. And in a way that's actually benefited the very country that they've come to for that peace. It's just also stupid that it's become like this. Martina says, Indians breed like rabbits. Is population that makes them appear powerful. In Australia, I think a lot of Indians are more from in the professional side, and I don't see them having large families like that. I get to meet a lot of different Indian families in the field of work that I do. It's not necessarily like that here in Australia, especially if they've grown up in Australia. They're not having these large families because they're also constrained by the economic conditions, and many of them are working professionals, and they're having children a lot later in life. All right, guys, let's go to the next story. Thanks for your patience there. I was getting through the comments. This one is a good one. Former senior advisor to Anthony Fauci indicted in COVID-19 cover-up case. I don't know if we should read the article or watch some videos. Let's have a look at what this is. Let's have a look. Here we go.
Fauci now facing criminal charges. This over an alleged former top advisor to Dr. Anthony Fauci now facing criminal charges. This over an alleged cover-up involving research into the origins of COVID. Rich Edson on this story. Intriguing, Rich. What you find out there in Washington?
Now, it is, Bill. The Justice Department has charged David Morans, a doctor, with conspiracy, claiming he concealed federal records to counter evidence that COVID-19 may have leaked from a lab in China, all to help restore a controversial coronavirus grant. Morans, a former aide to Dr. Anthony Fauci, testified before the House's COVID Select Subcommittee nearly 2 years ago about emails he'd sent in February 2021, claiming that he'd learned to make emails disappear after he received Freedom of Information Act requests.
Ever delete or attempt to delete a federal record?
No, but let me explain why. When I came there in 1998, we were instructed to delete emails or to move them into PST files frequently because they jammed the computer.
The Justice Department says Morans used his personal Gmail account to exchange non-public information. The indictment also claims an unnamed co-conspirator gave Morans wine for his, quote, behind-the-scenes shenanigans, then suggested he could push scientific commentary in a prominent medical journal advocating that COVID-19 had natural origins. That's a competing claim with the lab leak theory. The indictment says the co-conspirator could also provide meals at top restaurants in Paris, New York, and Washington, D.C. In April 2020, the NIH terminated that back coronavirus grant awarded to EcoHealth Alliance, who then contracted the Wuhan Institute of Virology to conduct that research in China. From the start of the pandemic, its president, Peter Daszak, worked to discredit any theory that COVID-19 had leaked from that lab.
Okay,
Bill?
all right, thank you.
So look, I mean, during those years, so many of us had suspicions that there was cover-ups afoot and that Anthony Fauci especially was not a man that could be trusted. So when we're seeing this type of indictment taking place for someone that's obviously deleted information, you know, involved in trying to create a different narrative when the actual information around the lab leak theory was being presented, he was trying to distract people from that. And it looks like he was taking bribes as well. So it makes you wonder what else is going on if this was a senior advisor. I had another related article to this that I wanted to bring up, so let's just bring that up as well. And that is that based on this, and not just on this, but, you know, because this happened under Anthony Fauci's watch, and there's been a litany of issues like this related to Anthony Fauci. Nancy Mace, Representative Republican, is saying, we're calling on the Department of Justice to indict former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Dr. Anthony Fauci for lying to Congress before the 5-year statute of limitations expires on May 11th. I think that's next year, I believe. This is, yeah. Anthony Fauci looked Congress in the eye and lied under oath about funding research tied to a pandemic killing millions of people worldwide, which he then used as justification to shut down our country. Former President Biden issued a blanket auto-pen pardon to Fauci on his final day in office, covering unspecified offenses dating back to 2014. We have serious questions about the validity of the pardon. The American people deserve to know that what was really happening when they were forced into quarantine, masked, and forcibly vaccinated in some cases. David Morans, a former senior NIAID official who worked directly under Dr. Fauci, has been indicted. This mishandling came from the top. The investigation should start there too. If there's one individual that deserves to rot in jail, it is this man. And they did this same setup, this same game. They played it in every country around the world, even today in Australia. That's why we don't really have proper and full investigations around the decisions that were made during the pandemic, is because they were all involved in misleading the public in one way or another. Now, in this case, one of Anthony Fauci's aides has been indicted for deleting emails and trying to, accepting bribes and trying to trick people. But it makes you wonder what more they were doing. And I'm 100% confident. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy. There's a lot of indicators here that something was very foul under Anthony Fauci and Anthony Albanese as well, make no doubt. And it needs to be, properly litigated in the US, of course, but even in Australia. Like, it's disgraceful, like someone said in the comments there, that these people have gotten away with it for so long. It is just completely disgraceful. We've got another video here. Let's have a listen.
Well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to my staff who literally found this needle in the haystack. We got a document dump of something like 115,000 pages. By the way, not from HHS or NIH. We got this from one of the universities that they were working with, providing grant money to. But in that tranche of 115,000 pages, my staff identified an email that David Morins, advisor to Fauci, wrote, and to paraphrase, said, we found a way to make FOIA-able documents disappear. And oh, by the way, people emailing me on the subject, don't email to my official account, email to my Gmail account. So old Dr. Morins, after two years plus of that disclosure, was arrested and indicted on conspiracy and destruction of federal records, and it's about time. Well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to my staff.
So when I started this show today, someone was saying we don't have a feel-good story. I think this is a feel-good story. One of Anthony Fauci's henchmen getting indicted and opening up the door, maybe more interest to actually prosecuting Fauci and throwing out that auto pen pardon that the Biden administration gave him, which was just, of course, a very massive joke. To give a pardon back to Anthony Fauci's time at the office until I think 2014, just randomly, automatically. Why aren't these people ever accountable? It sucks. So guys, I was seeing some of your comments, but we'll continue on with the stories because we're getting to 10 o'clock now. We've got a few more to get through. And then after this story, we'll get back to your comments. So this is related to the interim report into anti-Semitism and some of the findings and recommendations. So I'll read this one first. So this is about New South Wales Police. New South Wales Police under scrutiny over resources allocated to targeted Bondi Beach Hanukkah event. New South Wales police officers assigned to patrol the Hanukkah celebration targeted in the Bondi Beach terrorist attacks were told they did not need to stay the entire duration of the event, despite members of the Jewish community fearing it was at risk. The Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion was established after the deadly December 14th attack, and on Thursday delivered its first 14 recommendations. Commissioner Virgin Bell's 159-page report also examined the security arrangements for the Bondi Beach Hanukkah event by the sea, at which 15 people were killed. The report noted the attack came amid Australia's Security Intelligence Organisation publicly and repeatedly drawing attention to the heightened risk of terrorism and disturbing escalations of anti-Semitic incidents between August 2024 and the end of 2025. I wonder who was responsible for that. The Hanukkah by the Sea event was one of the three significant Hanukkah celebrations being held on the same night, with Jewish security agency Community Security Group New South Wales preparing risk assessments ahead of the events. CSG New South Wales told New South Wales Police on December 8th there was a heightened threat and risk and requested police assistance to ensure community safety at the planned Hanukkah gatherings. Commissioner Bell's report stated that this included a request for police resources for the entirety of the Hanukkah by the Sea event. The CSG New South Wales said a New South Wales police officer told them it could not provide static resources for Hanukkah by the Sea, but mobile and patrols from Eastern Suburbs Police Action Command would check in and monitor the event. It seems like a lifetime ago, but this has happened very recently in December. Here's just some of the victims there of that attack. In an email sent 3 days before the attack, the officers tasked with attending the event were told there was no need to stay the entire duration, but your presence will ensure the community feels safe. The Commission's report noted 3 general duties officers and 1 supervisor were allocated to the Hanukkah by the Sea event, with an officer from the Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command attending the event at various times. So this goes on, and this is just one of the findings of the particular investigation that's taking place at the moment. This also made international news, so this is being watched internationally as well. If I can bring up this article here from the BBC. Where was that? Here we go. So Jewish agency warned of high threat level ahead of Bondi shooting, report finds. This is the takeaway that a lot of the international news agencies are taking from this, that there's been some type of failure at a law enforcement level to protect the citizens there of Australia at this particular event when this terror attack took place. Now, at the same time, we've had Pauline Hanson's reacted as well to this interim report. Let's have a look at what she said. Oh, look at this ad. Look how big it is. My goodness. Whoa. It says, Pauline Hanson warns Islamic terror terrorists will target non-Muslims if issues is not addressed after release of pathetic Bondi report. One Nation leader Pauline Hanson has warned Islamic extremists will target non-Muslims if it is not stamped out by the government, calling the Bondi interim report pathetic on the issue. The first of the recommendations suggests that police increase presence at high risk and public-facing Jewish Australian festivals and events. It is also recommended the Counterterrorism Handbook be updated to at least every 3 years and that ANZ CTC provide annual briefings to National Cabinet. Speaking to Sky Host News' Chris Kenny, Ms. Hanson said the interim report was pathetic and that she did not hold any hopes for the final instalment. Ms. Hanson said Islamists were referred to only a handful of times in the 159-page report, while the gun issue was mentioned at least 100 times. And that does feel like a disparity, like they're really focusing on guns, which is not a massive issue per se in Australia, besides the fact that criminals have them, right? But they're really focusing in on the guns here. If it's mentioned 100 times, and when we know the real cause really is this extremist Islamic radical perversion that they have towards killing people of any race or group, and in particular in Australia at the very present time, attacking Jews. In the 9 unclassified recommendations, the National Gun Buyback Scheme is mentioned, but Islamic extremism is not. Ms. Hanson said the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was not addressing the elephant in the room, Islamic terrorism and the ideologies behind the terror attack at Bondi and why it happened in Australia. It's happening all around the world, and yet we are being shut down to really discussing and debate the whole issue, Ms. Hanson said. The One Nation leader said the government should be looking at immigration and what's happening in our mosques. It should look at immigration, the people brought into the country, the imams, the preachers, the hate preachers, what's happening in our mosques to create this hate in the country. I agree with Senator Hanson. Like, that's the thing. This kid, or not kid, this terrorist, the son, he was born in Australia, all right? And he was radicalized in mosques here in Australia. So clearly there's an issue there that needs to be addressed. And it's very clear from the fact that they had ISIS flags, the things that they were yelling and shouting, their target group, that this was very much a part of Islamic radical terrorism. Like, I don't know why there's this whole attempt to point fingers at other things. Yes, we can look at those other things as well. We can look at guns and how they had access to these guns and firearms laws and all these things. That's fine. You can do that as well. But it's clear to everyone the root cause is to do with radical Islamic terrorism. Like, that is the root cause. That is the reason that these freaks, these psychopaths, had the ISIS flag on their boot or on the hood of their car, which blew my mind when the AFP commissioner said at the time that it was not religiously motivated. Can you see a trend here with how authorities wanted to deal with this? It's crazy. And at the same time, we're seeing, yesterday there was an attack in the UK, and the language that's used in the UK around these attacks and the language that's used here in Australia is very similar, right? It's very similar. Let's have a look at Albanese, what he had to say about this and the recommendations.
Found that our existing legal and regulatory frameworks did not hinder our agencies in preventing or responding to the Bondi attack, and that no urgent changes are required to keep Australians safe. But the Commissioner does make 14 recommendations which go to enhancing our national counter-terrorism arrangements and capabilities. This is, as the government envisaged, that the first task of the Royal Commission, the priority was to look at the security elements of these issues. I can confirm that the National Security Committee has met this morning, and we have adopted and will implement all the recommendations of the interim report that are relevant to the Commonwealth. A number of the recommendations relate to state and territory jurisdictions aimed at ensuring a nationally consistent approach to implementation, and we'll work constructively with state and territory governments on those issues. A small number of recommendations are classified because they could compromise sensitive national security information. But I can assure the Australian public that the government will do everything necessary to protect the community. In the wake of the Bondi attack, my government took immediate action to bolster the resources of our security agencies, tackle anti-Semitism, crack down on hate preachers and deliver tougher gun laws. That's why we brought the Parliament back in January. We weren't able to get the support across the Parliament of everything we wanted to achieve, but we did make substantial progress. Commissioner Bell's recommendations complement those changes that we already made.
Yeah, look, I'm not convinced by Albanese. This feels like the government just patting itself on its back. Like it's like, hey, we did the thing that we're meant to do to make it look like we're doing something. That's what this feels like, right? That's what it feels like. What's the hats off saying? Australia to act on a secret anti-Semitism report after Bondi terror attack with 5 recommendations kept classified. Everyone wants to know what the classified recommendations are. Authorities say withheld measures involve sensitive security details that cannot be made public. There could be a reason for it, but they don't want to touch the elephant in the room. Maybe it comes in the second half, right? I'm not holding my breath that this actually happens. We did see an attack again in the UK, so these attacks keep happening in the West. We had a crazed person with a knife attacking members of the Jewish community. Luckily they were stopped. But it's a very dangerous time still, and it's still possible that Australia is still under this threat because of the fact that we live in a country where they're trying to bring back ISIS brides. We live in a country where there's unchecked mass immigration and there's no attempts at assimilation, and all of this heightens the possibility that another one of these attacks could occur because people are being radicalized in mosques. Like we had mosques during when the Ayatollah Khomeini was beautifully taken out there by the US and the Israelis with one of those bunker busting bombs, took out a lot of those terrorists in the IRGC. We had people in mosques here. IRGC is a registered terrorist organization here in Australia. We had people in mosques in Australia holding prayer meetings around these. Part of religion is used to allow this terrorism to permeate in Australian society. There are many countries in the Gulf states and other parts of the world, Islamic countries, Muslim countries, that have outright banned these type of actions or these type of groups. But for some reason, we keep allowing it to happen here in Australia. I like your comment there, Dan Adams. He died like a dog. Al Baghdadi. I don't lose sleep over terrorists getting blown up. Again, they're terrorists. They're criminals. They've inflicted lots of suffering on people for a long, long time. And, I sleep very soundly at night knowing that we have agencies and governments like the Trump administration who are willing to ensure that they live in fear and terror as well, because for terrorizing us. Let's see some of your comments, guys, and then we'll go to the next story, which is related to all of this. And this is the condom flotilla that is on the way to Gaza, or was on the way to Gaza, but has been seized. I'm hearing all sorts of stories about this on social media. It's one wild, I'm sorry about the language, but some type of sex orgy that's taking place on these boats. And this is why individuals are taking part in this. And there is a weird video as well. Like these people, I don't think they're all there really. Like I know they're saying that they're doing this because of all the suffering. Actually, I'm going to read the comments and then we'll come back to this story. All right, let's see what you guys are saying. If I can find my comments here on the screen. Here we go. Thrown Within says we shouldn't be importing other people. We should be creating our own families. The fact we've not been able to build our own families and instead look for immigration is a very awful decision and shows how incoherent our priorities are. I agree with your point. Like there's issues with the fertility rate. There's issues with certain ethnic groups having children. For instance, the only group that's really having a lot of children in the West tend these days to be either extremely religious groups of a certain type, or people of the Islamic or Muslim backgrounds. They have large families. Traditionally, in the past, Catholics would have large families. Like my families are Catholic. My dad comes from a family of 10 siblings, and even if you look at what's happening for instance, in Sri Lanka, for instance, there's no more large families. This is happening all around the world. In Catholic or Christian cultures, there's no more large families. Catholics definitely used to have big families. It's not happening anymore. So that has an impact when you have people who are, let's say, native born to the land, and they are no longer procreating and having children. And then you have immigrants that have come who are now a part of the country, but they are having, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 children. All right. And sometimes, based on the cultural aspects of it, they might have multiple wives or whatever it is, and there might be even more children. So when you have this over time, over like 10, 20, 30 years, it can shift population demographics and ethnic demographics to a certain variation that is very foreign or alien to what was there before. Okay, that's kind of happening. I don't know who you blame for that, but that is happening. I got here from Dean Fauci is a lizard person. I mean, that guy was full of it. Anthony Fauci was full of it. He reminded me of the guy here in Australia, Norman Swan on the ABC. Like, obviously that guy was just a television vax pusher. But we did have all these, do you remember during that time, all these slimy experts that they would get on the TV to just speak down to us and pontificate all manner of things about, like, it's just, exclusive fact that they know. It's the elite. They know. All the rest of us plebs down there, we should listen to them and inject ourselves. Like, this is the people that they were on TV, and Anthony Fauci was one of the worst. If by, in history or in any country in the world, Anthony Fauci was up there because he was really leading a lot of this push. Dean says, I bet you Anthony Fauci never took a single vaccine. And Montana Mia and Anthony Albanese, he didn't crack down or anything. Yeah, I haven't really seen, like, anytime there's an anti-Semitic event that takes place, what you get is you have politicians saying we take it very seriously. It has no place in our society. You can almost repeat the same lines for their press conference every single time it happens. It's almost on repeat. Yilmaz, how you doing, mate? Good to see you. Thanks for joining in the show. And good comments. Jewish communities deserve to live freely, safely amongst the rest of us. 100%. Jewish Australians deserve to live freely and in peace. I don't see them in Australia causing issues for anyone else. Like, they deserve to live in peace as well. And they're great contributors to Australian society. And Odin Bale says, I saw a National Geographic story that any white population with over 10% brown or black, the whole nation will be brown within 6 generations as the darker genes are stronger. I don't know if this genes are stronger, but obviously there is a lot of intermixing, intermarriages. I do a lot of weddings, obviously, as a wedding photographer and cinematographer. And, over the last 6-7 years, the predominant type of marriages that I do are more so, as in predominant, as in when I have I'm not saying every single marriage that I do, but predominantly I do see people are having mixed marriages. So whether it's white Australian men or girls marrying into Indian families or Asian families, that's more common for sure. From what I see, doing a lot of like Indian related weddings, I do see a lot more of that intermarriage taking place and mixtures of culture. And yes, over time, that's going to change the population for sure. Do you believe the Orthodox Jews have assimilated? Well, this is the thing. You can have groups of people within a culture that don't assimilate into all aspects of a culture. They do their own thing, but they then also don't try to influence the rest of culture. And I think that's what you get with Orthodox Jews, is that they're not trying to push their religious views on other people. Like they're not out there trying to recruit other Orthodox Jews. Like they're just doing their thing. And you have that there's small pockets of lots of different communities like that in Australia, from different countries or different regions or different religious beliefs, that kind of just do their own thing. They're not out there in force. You don't really hear too much about the Buddhist community doing something. You don't really hear about the Buddhist community involved in politics, for instance. It's very rare. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but certain religious groups, certain religious sects, or certain very small but influential groups even that might get prominence because of the fact that they're very rare, right? They're not really trying to dictate Australian life. They just kind of want to be left alone and do their thing. It's probably the best way to put it. Yeah, they're like the Amish. Yeah, I mean, yeah, similar to that. Even the Amish, they're not really Amish. They're not really trying to get other people to join them per se. They want to be left alone. Yeah, this is also a good point. I'm Orthodox. I think he means ultra-Orthodox. We are very much assimilated. That's true. I was thinking more ultra-Orthodox for sure when I was saying that. And I've met people who are ultra-Orthodox, and like you can't, when you speak to them, some of them, like, they're Aussie, like, you know what I mean? It's just they want to live a certain way and do things a certain way. And I have no problem with that. If people want to do things a certain way, and as long as they're not trying to force it onto others, I don't care. You know, one of the reasons I have issues with a lot of this trans stuff is the fact that they're trying to force it onto people. They're trying to force it onto children, indoctrinate people. You know, if a grown adult wants to do weird things in the privacy of their bedroom, whatever, yes, we could have a discussion and argument about it. But we're mostly living in today a very kind of secular country. And if people want to do weird things, like, yeah, okay. Like, just like, I don't want to know about it. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying religious practices are weird. I'm just saying, like, as long as people aren't interfering with other people and they're freely practicing their religion and not trying to indoctrinate people, not trying to create terrorists, you know, not trying to, you know, groom children to blow buildings up or turn into terrorists that shoot up a Hanukkah event, I'm okay with that's not a problem. But the opposite is true in many instances in Australia. Hey, Dad, I'm doing good. Thanks for joining the show. Throne says, I do have a problem with that. I want Australian culture, not multiculturalism. I get that argument as well. I would prefer a monoculture for sure. One predominant culture. You can have what I say when the numbers are controlled and, you know, there's not the overwhelming number of immigrants, for instance, like we have now, where complete, demographic shifts are going on. Then it's hard to have multiculturalism. Like, there's many countries in the world that have people that practice different cultures. They're multi-ethnic, but I wouldn't really say they're multicultural in the sense that there's already a prevailing way that people are expected to live in that country. So it is possible to do this. It's just the West has this grandiose idea that somehow they can have multiculturalism being the ultimate success of the West. Like, we were able to achieve this, and I don't think they are. And great point, Yilmaz. Not only do they not force, it's actually extremely difficult to become Jewish, with rabbis rejecting faithfuls multiple times. That's true. All right, guys, let's go to the next story. This one is the flotilla. How are we doing for time? I'm going to have to be fast now. Half an hour left. Israel seizes global Samud flotilla boats 1,000 kilometers away from Gaza. Israeli forces intercepted around a dozen Gaza-bound aid boats from global Samud flotilla in international waters near the Greek island of Crete. More than 1,000 kilometers from Israel, organizers call it an illegal attack on civilian and international waters. Let's have a look at the boat.
laying around them. So they are.
Any further attempt to sail toward Gaza places your safety at risk and leaves the IDF no choice but to...
Anyway, you get the idea. Look, these guys are a nuisance. I don't think any country, especially around their seas, want these boats with civilians mostly trying to float into a bit of a hot war zone in that area. I know it's very different to what we were seeing in Gaza just a few months ago, before this ceasefire type thing that's happening there at the moment. But I don't think any of the countries in that region actually want these boats going through there. That's why they allow, or that's why Israel gets to do this. In a public way, they might make certain distance themselves from Israel and so on. But you know, I think they want them to do this because you don't want these idiots from different countries, and you're getting these kind of woke left activists from all over the world that are doing these things, these stunts, and it doesn't achieve anything. The little amount of aid that they are supposedly bringing in on their boats won't amount to anything of any significance. I was on the Gaza border when I was in Israel, and there is tons and tons and tons and tons of aid that are there from the surrounding countries, from the US, from Israel itself. So this is all a stunt. These people aren't going to change any outcome. None of the actions that they've really taken had been effective whatsoever. And they're a nuisance. And there's also a lot of, I think, valid concerns around what's happening on these boats. Like, a lot of people have said that this is kind of a social media thing, that it's an influencer thing where they go on the boats, they take, videos of themselves, like these activists. Apparently there's a lot of consensual sex that takes place on these boats. That's why the IDF is calling them condom flotilla. And this video that came up, this is actually them on an Israeli Navy ship. These are people, these people don't seem very distressed whatsoever, but I'm sure they will claim that they were beaten up and bruised. This is a Gaza flotilla activist on an Israeli Navy ship just a few hours ago. Let's have a look. Let's see what they're up to. It's like a weird episode of Big Brother. They will make hostage videos later. Someone's saying, get Greta to do a hostage video. I mean, come on. I want to see what these guys, like, they're talking about how it's like an attack on them and this and that. They're doing aerobics and gymnastics while they're waiting on the Navy ship. Just basically left-wing activists that have nothing better to do. They're not being effective in their countries. Now they're going on boats to harass international countries. And rightly, the navies in those countries are protecting their seas. Can you imagine if the IDF allowed some civilian ship to enter their waters around that area? Can you just imagine? what that kind of consent that gives. Like, it's so important to protect your borders, your national security interests. Would Australia allow some random activist ship to come from Indonesia to free the whatever cause that they were fighting for in Australia? No, we should either sink the ship or turn it back around. This is ridiculous. And this is, of course, another problem with the West, that a lot of people in the West believe they can just get onto a boat and try to stop a war with just their social media influence. It's ridiculous. It's silly. All right, guys, next story. I just wanted to bring that up because, I saw the IDF post condom flotilla and I found it quite funny. This one is quite tragic, and I think it'll become a major story in Australia over the next couple of days. This is from the BBC, but something very close to home here. And it's the tragic death of this beautiful little girl, and the circumstances. Of course, she's been missing. Now her body's been found, and I believe, I haven't checked the news as I've been doing this show, but the individual wanted for questioning in relation to this is still on the run within the Aboriginal community as well. It's a major talking point here in Australia, and we've seen a lot of focus and attention from people in Australian government to really make their presence feel known. But I do believe that the blame game will start at a certain point into who's responsible for this. I'm already seeing this brewing, and people making different accusations on who is responsible for something like this happening. Now, at the end of the day, it's one sick individual or a group or those circumstances that lead to a situation like this for someone like this who is helpless, for sure. But there's always something that's politicized in these incidents. So if you don't know this story, I'm going to just quickly read a little bit of it just to give you a debrief, and then we'll move on to the next story. But I do think this is something we need to watch out for in Australia, as it will become a point of discussion, and very sad and tragic, but it will be politicized. Police believe they have found the body of a 5-year-old girl allegedly abducted from her outback home as a search for her suspected murderer continues. The girl, who is identified only as Kumanji Little Baby for cultural reasons, was last seen on Saturday when she was put onto bed at an Aboriginal town camp near Alice Springs just before midnight. Now, we know there's been all sorts of problems in Alice Springs for a long time, in that region for a long time. A lot of it has to do with the government programs. A lot of it has to do with cultural issues within the Aboriginal communities. And a lot of it has to do with, domestic violence and drinking. And then also, we've always known that there's issues around, sexual abuse, these type of things taking place within these communities as well. Now, some people, like Senator Lydia Thorpe, for instance, other Indigenous politicians who are more from the left wing, have always got up and blamed white people for this and have not wanted to address some of these problems in that same way. They say it's racist when you try to address some of these problems. And then at the same time, you have, on the other side of the spectrum, politicians who have tried to manage this in that more Western outlook and more Western approach, and that's brought up old wounds, in the history of Australia, something like the stolen children, the stolen generation, these kind of issues. So I can see those threads now in the discussions that people are having, and it's not going to, burst open straight away because it's still an ongoing thing, but I'm already seeing the blame game starting. Northern Territory Police say the body of a child was located on Thursday, and forensic testing to confirm the young girl's identity and cause of death is underway. They've been combing nearby bush and desert for Jefferson Lewis. So Jefferson Lewis, if there's a photo of him here, I don't know, there's no photo, but he is the person that they're looking for. I'll try to find an image of that guy just so you know. But tragic whenever children are harmed in this way, and the hope is that always that you'll be able to find these kids in time. But unfortunately, they've found a body, which is very sad. So what we know about Jefferson Lewis, a man police are searching for over the alleged abduction of a 5-year-old girl in Alice Springs. So this is the guy, all right? A 47-year-old man being sought in connection with the alleged abduction of a 5-year-old girl, Sharon Granites, has a long history of violence and prison time in the Northern Territory, the ABC can confirm. NT police have said they are gravely concerned for the whereabouts of Sharon. Okay, this is before they found the body. But this is someone with a deep criminal history that is being accused of this murder now that we know the body's been found. And again, it goes back to these issues around, whenever we hear anything to do with Indigenous crime, the left will always cry about, deaths in custody and things like this. And, does that lead to leniency? Does that lead to people like this ending up in the streets, ending up in situations where they can harm children like this? Those are the discussions we're going to be having, I believe, in Australia very soon after this tragic death. Now, another feel-good story, I guess, depending on what you view about Palachuk, former Premier of Queensland, her now boyfriend, has been raided by the police. My goodness. Has been raided by the police. Dramatic moment, cops storm $1 million unit owned by high-flying surgeon boyfriend of Anastasia Palachuk. Officers are spotted searching his barbecue as major police investigation unfolds. Police have raided the Gold Coast beachfront apartment of prominent surgeon Dr. Reza Abdib, the long-term partner of former Queensland Premier Anastasia Palachuk, as a part of an ongoing investigation. About half a dozen officers, including forensic police, descended on Norfolk building at Burleigh on Thursday morning, executing a search of Dr. Abib's $1 million unit. 7 News reported that the police removed items from the apartment, with officers at one point seen searching inside a barbecue on the balcony. What was he hiding in the barbecue? What was Dr. Abib hiding under the barbecue? You can see them walking out with bags of different things. It could be related to something to do with financial fraud or something like this. I'm not sure exactly. I'm just speculating here. Like, we don't really know exactly what the reason is yet. This is a very wealthy individual as well. He's got a mansion that's cost him $6.25 million. But at some point, the former premier hooked up with him, and now she's in this whole mess, this story. I'm sure many people will be looking at the story to figure out what's going on. Did Anastasia have any knowledge of this? For so far, they're saying no. She's been surprised by all of this as well. I'd like to see what unfolds there. Again, I say feel good story in jest, but Anastasia, the former premier of Queensland, also rubbed many people the wrong way during those COVID years, and people have a very long memory when it comes to these individuals. I can't even say her last name correctly. I think I've been screwing up her last name whenever I spoke. Someone said there he's hiding Ozempic. Oh, guys. All right. Last story. And then we'll finish up with the chats. It's at 10:40 now, so 20 minutes left. We're just going to watch this video of Erica Kirk. If you've missed this is back to US politics. But this is a response to what is happening in the US in terms of the political violence that we see, the disintegration of society in general in the US, some of the back and forth, even within the Republican Party that we've seen over the last couple of months, as well as she's also addressing here people like Candace Owens, the gropers, people who have blamed her for her husband's death in some way or another. Now, she specifically says in this video that Candace Owens has said that she murdered her husband. Now, technically, Candace Owens hasn't uttered those exact words or phrases, but she has insinuated as such. She has made multiple inferences that this is a possibility that Erica Kirk might be involved in some nefarious plot alongside all the other plot lines that she throws out there. So she's addressed that here as well. And a few other people and things. So let's watch a little bit of her response. And then I'll read your comments while this is playing. And I'll finish up the show reading your comments and any other questions you might have. If you do have any questions, please do a Q first so I can search for them quickly. Just put a Q and then a space and then write what you want to write. That'll help me find them. But let's listen to Erica Kirk for a little bit and then we'll finish up the show.
Seems to me that nothing will ever be enough for the evil in this world. Our country is...
Let's just fix the audio quickly. It's a little bit delayed. Bear with me. Let me just get the audio fixed because we want to listen to it nicely. Right? We want to listen to it good. I think that's better.
To me that nothing will ever be enough for the evil in this world. Our country has become unrecognizable. These people have perverted the truth to the point that they motivated the murder of my husband. They have continuously tried to assassinate the president, and anyone who stands in their way is labeled hateful, racist, fascist, and every other trigger word that is grossly dishonest. We want the best for our country. They don't. This is why Charlie started Turning Point USA in the first place. He didn't trust the radicalized liberal teachers. And this past Saturday, it was a school teacher, of all people, a school teacher that attempted to change our history for the worst with bullets. And everyone is asking why I even went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And it was because many of the journalists in that room have attempted to dehumanize me, and I wanted to meet some of them face to face, quite frankly. Why have a conversation about me when you can have a conversation with me? So, for example, a journalist from the Daily Mail came up to me. She introduced herself, and she was very gracious. She was saying, "You look so beautiful. I'm so sorry for your loss." To which I replied, "It is so nice to put a name to the face, especially with all of the slander, the lies, accusations that are out there surrounding my husband's murder and myself." And I said to her, "You know what's so interesting? This is my first time at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I find it so fascinating, the dynamic that is going on right now, because everyone is all dressed up, and you guys are co-mingling in and out of each other's cocktail parties. And so for one night, you are able to put aside all of your differences for the sake of freedom of speech. And then by Monday morning, things will go back to being an absolute bloodbath between all of you." To which she replied, literally, she said, "I know. Isn't it special, right? Isn't tonight so special?" And following that conversation, it was time to take our seats, and we went into the big ballroom where the dinner was. And one of the first things I noticed when I walked into that room was quite literally the proximity of the opposing outlets to one another. So you have one table here that's Politico, and another table here that's Fox, and another table here that's WAPO, and you're all crammed together, elbow to elbow. And to make the night even more of a spectacle, every single 10-person table had 10 bottles of wine. And the president of the White House Correspondents Association, she did a great job of trying to make the evening have that feeling of Americana. You know, we were in a room celebrating freedom of speech despite our differences. And the U.S. Marine Band performed the national anthem so beautifully. And then shortly thereafter, gunshots rang out and total chaos ensued. And you guys have all seen what happened next because there are 1,000 videos of it. So let's discuss that fact for a second. If you were in that room, you had no way of knowing what the status of the shooter was, how many there were, or honestly, really anything. It was just utter chaos. And so during an active shooting, these journalists are using their phones to find moments to capture for clips. They were so concerned about getting a video in a room with an active shooter that they could have accidentally and quite literally filmed themselves being shot. Many of those people have become so desensitized that fight or flight became secondary to the opportunity of putting themselves into the story, which ironically breaks the #1 rule of journalism. And again, ironically enough, the shooter was a teacher.
So I do think a critique of journalism and the current kind of American climate when it comes to journalism is interesting for sure. It is interesting, obviously, in its own, without Erica Kirk speaking about it, but it's I guess it's in a way interesting that she's addressing that specifically. There was a lot of criticism of her for attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner. People made a lot of criticism around that, saying that, you know, she looked too happy, she was glowing. She came with like another journalist, a journalist from Fox. Some people were saying that they're dating, like they're not. He's engaged. He's about to get married, and she was just there with this journalist, right? This is a correspondence, between, there's journalists, there's politicians, there's like a mix of all these different people. And I believe it was someone who was friends with her husband. So all these things were said about her, and I think she feels like she has to come out and, make a statement based on what's happening in America. And that day they did try to assassinate the president again, and her husband was assassinated. So she's talking about the culture of journalism. And it's true, like I did see during the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when the attack took place on X straight after, all the videos of just people, journalists in there, obviously reporting on the news of what happened, pointing the camera at themselves. And, I don't know, like that's kind of the world we live in now a little bit. I know what Erica Kirk's trying to say here, but it is kind of the world that we live in right now. People flick on their phones and they will literally film everything now. We can have a discussion about whether that's good or bad in terms of where society's headed. And I tend to agree with some of the points that she's saying. But this is the nature of the politics in the US and this instant news phenomena that we have, where people want to be a part of the news even. Even in a situation like that where there might be an active shooter, someone trying to assassinate the president, you don't know what might be happening. There are people more focused on news or gathering news or being a part of the news and things like this. But I don't know, like for me as a journalist that, independent journalist that covers news as well, my first instinct probably would be to record what's happening around me and film that as well. I don't know why that would be, but I think it's just natural instinct these days. But I understand kind of what the critique she's making overall of American culture and the issues that they have with politics and people wanting to kill people. It's a violent culture in many aspects, right? That's what she's kind of trying to address.
You have these people who are supposed to be teaching our children the future of this country, and he's so unhinged that he is able to teach children by day and then attempt to murder the president of the United States by night. And in his manifesto, he starts by contextualizing himself by saying, "I am a citizen of the United States of America." And while we may have big problems with illegal immigration in this country, I have to tell you, we have an even bigger problem when it comes to the systemic indoctrination and radicalization of our own citizens. This is what got my husband killed. This is what has led to 3 legitimate attempts on President Trump's life. And I can speak firsthand to that unbearable toll that this must take on our First Lady. There has never been a president who has faced this many assassination attempts in Americans' entire history. And after each one, the reaction from the far left has been, at best, a shrug, and in some cases, a sick disappointment that the shooter was unsuccessful. We are all human beings. And if you can just pause and just take a minute and ask yourself, how would you feel if even just one person made cruel jokes about the attempted murder of your loved one? That is what Jimmy Kimmel did to the First Lady. He said that she had the glow of an expected widow. The glow of an expected widow. Just 48 hours before that nightmare almost became a reality. And this culture we're living in absorbs disagreement as a form of personal betrayal. It turns having an opposing viewpoint into a moral crime worthy of punishment. And here's what I've realized through all of this, truly, having lived through quite literal hell these past 7 months, if you strip someone of their humanity long enough, you will arrive at the chilling conclusion that they don't deserve to exist at all. Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me. I have comedians dressing up in whiteface. I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO, and I have Candace Owens claiming I murdered my husband. And the list goes on and on and on.
So those remarks have really caught people's attention, especially the fact that she has now publicly, very, very publicly called out Candace Owens, who has made it a thing of talking about Erica Kirk. She's kind of done a series on her as well. And I understand why Erica Kirk's doing this, because the attacks against her have been relentless from people. They have analyzed all aspects of almost everything she does, the way that she should grieve, the way that she should smile, the interactions she should have with people, how long she should be at home for, how long she should be out, when she should be out of the house, what she should be doing on her daily life. I mean, I don't think any of us are in a position to judge how someone would react in the shoes of Erica Kirk as to what happened to her husband, and then also the very public outcry that happened afterwards following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. She was thrust into this very public stages of, being a spokesman for her husband's company, and also the grieving process. Everything has been done very publicly on the public stage. Now, people can criticize her for this, but I think she was thrust into that based on the fact that there was this massive outpouring of grief following the death of Charlie Kirk. And now into that space, a lot of different people came into that space to try to claim some sort of proximity to Charlie Kirk, or to claim a part of his message, or to say that he was for this side, he was for Israel, he was for the US, he supported Israel, he was against Israel. Like, these things matter a lot. Like, somehow he was going to change the outcome of a war or the world. Like, that's really ever happened before in this particular regard. Like, it's, we're not talking about a president per se. We're talking about someone who was involved in political operations day to day, of getting young people enthused about politics and debating people. And I did see some comments earlier, like a lot of people saying they wouldn't have really known who Erica Kirk is. Many people didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was until his death, unless you followed American politics very closely. Many even young people wouldn't have really known who Charlie Kirk was. Maybe in the US, but outside of the US, no. So a lot of it has become this cultural phenomena, and Erica Kirk is almost in a drama now, in a way. Again, it's not her fault, but she has been forced to publicly defend herself in this manner, and everything is analyzed. And I understand she's kind of very, the way that she's dressed, even in black here, and her attire, people are making comments about that. Why did she choose this outfit? Why is she, looking like mean and rough? What's she trying to prove? So it is very difficult for her. So I agree with a lot of the stuff that she said at the start, for sure. Just the basic, discussion around the violence in America and the political violence and journalism per se. I agree with that. But I tend to agree with them more about her diagnosis around the things which have happened following the death of her husband, and the nature of the attacks against her from people like Candace Owens, who is very deranged, obviously. We've seen evidence of her derangement very recently, Candace Owens. She's made all sorts of wild accusations, claims, defenses of Tyler Robinson even, and wild allegations that multiple people of conspiracies, involvement in Charlie's death, that somehow Erica would have been a part of it. Now, Erica Kirk specifically said that Candace Owens says that, that she murdered her husband. Now, a lot of people have jumped to the defense of Candace Owens, saying that she never really specifically said that. She never said that. She never used those words. She never used those words, is what many people are saying. But, there is so much video out there of so many Candace Owens episodes. And again, I want to bring up Milk Bar TV, a often quoted source on my shows, and many Americans also quote Nathan, who is an Aussie here, who started doing these videos during COVID time, these comparison videos. And he's done great videos documenting Candace Owens, insinuating that Erica Kirk is somehow responsible for Charlie Kirk's death, and she's involved in some conspiracy. So I want to end off the show by watching that video, and then I'll maybe read some of your comments, and then we'll finish up. But let's have a listen to Candace Owens in her own words talking about Erica Kirk being involved in Charlie Kirk's murder. Let's have a listen in.
But I'm starting to think that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was something akin to a regicide, right? The assassination of a king to install a new ruler who the king would have never approved of. Anyways, back at headquarters.
So there, the assassination of Charlie Kirk was a regicide to get rid of a king to install the new ruler. So who is the new ruler? Who is the new CEO that she's talking about? She's talking about, of course, Erica Kirk in that instance. Let's keep watching.
I am told it's business as usual, and it's kind of giving me like, I don't know, LBJ when he gets sworn in that famous picture. Unfortunately, sworn in. Unfortunately, of course, he's sad in this photo. Gosh, he's obviously not wanting to be the president of the United States. JFK was shot and killed, and now LBJ has to step up, unfortunately. But I gotta be honest, I wasn't there. I don't think LBJ was actually that upset. I don't know why. Vibes. The vibes just aren't vibing for me in that picture.
Oh, the vibes. The vibes aren't vibing. What's the other famous line that she says? I know because I got to look at that quote. No. Something like this, right? Something ridiculous.
Knowing, as I do, and as Charlie did believe that LBJ was involved, which then implicates the feds as having been involved, which then implicates the Dallas police station as being involved. I believe Israel was obviously involved, that they were the ones that wanted him dead. When Ben came out swinging, I was going, oh, something's very wrong here. Basically, Erica here is pulling the LBJ, and what I mean by that is as soon as LBJ got into office after JFK's assassination, he reversed course on every single one of JFK's policies. JFK's enemies seemingly became LBJ's friends. Erica appears to be doing that to me.
So this is kind of how she does it. This is how she builds it up, and
but I'm starting to think assassination.
She never uses the words directly, but she insinuates multiple times over and over that there's some sort of conspiracy, that Erica Kirk is involved. This is just some videos, of course, right? But there's many instances of this. There's many quotes of this. I'm not going to go through all of it now, but she is very well known for doing this. So check out Milk Bar TV. He's on X if you want to look up these videos. He does a lot of work on Candace Owens, because the biggest thing that highlights the issues with Candace Owens and exposes her lies is Candace Owens herself, because she keeps saying multiple things which are false. She backtracks. She never corrects herself. She keeps continuing the lies and says more and more lies. As you can tell, I'm not a massive fan of Candace Owens. And we got a Mariana saying, interesting how you are ending for your own agenda. Tell me, Mariana, what is my agenda in this instance? Erica Kirk made that video today. It was posted this morning, and I'm just reflecting on that. I don't, agree with Cooker Owens, and I'm happy to put it out there to the public that I think she's full of it. And it is what it is. I'm not saying that she's not effective at what she does as a propagandist, but I think many times she's been shown to be misleading individuals very openly. Now, this is the problem with Candace. What is false? Prove that what she says is false. Well, you can't really prove what she says is false, because the things she says are ridiculous. It's not about proving them false. It's just ridiculous. It's things that people can't really prove. She's like, insinuating things, multiple conspiracies, and there's no way to prove any of it. That's her whole shtick. That's what she does. I'm going to play one more video, because she does lie a lot. Let's just watch this other video. I'm playing this for Mariana. Thanks for joining in the show, Mariana.
His burial. How come we haven't seen anything about his burial? We saw so much and then we saw nothing. And the reason that's like a big hush-hush secret is because Charlie had a Catholic funeral mass. and he is buried in a Catholic cemetery.
But pre the meeting with Erica, you repeatedly questioned why we weren't being told where Charlie Kirk is buried, or even if he has been buried yet. Did you get those answers?
You have the wrong commentator who questioned that. I think that was Milo Yiannopoulos.
You've never asked where Charlie's buried?
Nope.
But if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
It's just, I don't even know how to respond to it because it just never happened. Realizing that nothing in Charlie's life was real. It's just something that keeps me up at night. Just nothing in his life was real. The assassination of Charlie Kirk was something akin to a regicide, right? The assassination of a king to install a new ruler who the king would have never approved of. It's so crazy.
She has accused us of lying about Charlie wanting Erica to take over for him if he died.
Never happened. And it just so happened that Charlie Kirk kept notebooks and diaries. He was so diligent that he wrote down his succession plan featuring who he wanted to take over for the organization in the event of his untimely death. Like, he just, in the third notebook, he was like, oh, and if I accidentally get shot on campus, here's what you should do. Call Erica. And then after you call Erica, come find this notebook. And if during this process of our imagination, common sense comes on and we're like, but wait, Charlie, wasn't he like a boy genius? He's a pretty bright kid. Wouldn't he have maybe formalize that succession plan outside of like a diary? But no, he wanted to put it in these notebooks. And then the plan was to guilt us, I think, to try to haunt us with the ghost of Charlie's notebooks that we're never going to be allowed to read, but we're supposed to accept that they most definitely read. Like, for sure. Never happened. I knew it was big. I didn't have the players. I certainly didn't suspect Turning Point USA would be, as I believe, involved in a cover-up. And we can talk about what the motives are of that. They could be financial motives. It doesn't necessarily mean they were involved in plotting to kill him. And I've never said that. Cam Higbee is on the payroll of Turning Point USA beginning in August of this year. So in theory, Cam Higbee, who was laughing off the idea of an assassination attempt, is being paid by the very organization that just had its leader assassinated in broad daylight in front of the entire world.
You get the idea. She's all over the place. She makes things up. She says one thing one day, another thing the next day. It is a technique that she's using. Her viewers aren't very discerning, I believe. A lot of them are just being taken for the ride and have bought into it all. She's not provided any evidence on any of these things. She just made stuff up continuously. If you want further analysis of this, which I don't have time to do today, one of Candace Owens' people that she doesn't like, I think Jeremy Boring, he did a great video on the tactics that are being used by Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. So if you want to watch this, I'll just
taken by yet another leftist anti-American.
It's by Jeremy Boring. It's called The 18 Tactics Tucker and Candace Used to Manipulate You. It's on YouTube. You can watch this. I recommend, even if you don't agree with what I'm saying here today. It's a great analysis of the propaganda and how it's used by people like Tucker and Candace and the techniques that they use to, over time, build up these false narratives. So that's available on YouTube for free to watch from Jeremy Boring.
This past weekend, as he often does.
I won't play that night, guys, but as you can tell, I'm slurring my speech as well. We're past 11 o'clock. I've had a pretty long day, but like I said, I will be back next week. So these shows go from on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Tuesdays, we do usually have the opposition podcast, but Avi's been very busy this week with the Free Palestine Party, which I am now a member of. I'm a member of the Free Palestine Party. You can find out more information about that across all the mainstream media who have been covering this story very deeply. On Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. I normally do these shows. So tune in next week. There's a few things changing. You'll notice that next week there's some things that are happening around Rukshan and my career and things that I'm doing. So you'll find out about that next week. That's exciting. And if you're joining in for the first time and you haven't, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can find me on YouTube, X, Rumble, Twitch. I've got someone watching on Twitch. Thanks, mate, for watching on Twitch and Facebook, as well as you can find me on Instagram as well. But yeah, join on these platforms, subscribe and follow, join in the shows. You can do the comments. I've got people here that like me, that don't like me, trolls, people who won't agree with everything that I have to say. Marina, thanks for joining in. Propaganda, they're actually questioning the propaganda from the other side. Well, there's only so much questioning of propaganda that you can do. If I wanted, I could do a whole show just questioning the propaganda, talking about conspiracies. But if you can't bring facts and evidence, I'm not going to accuse people of doing things and have killed people and so forth. Similar to what Candace Owens has been doing, jumping around all over the place for the last couple of months. And that's why she's lost a lot of credibility. I don't blame people for this. That's right, Mariana. You can find us on the Free Palestine Party, the website. If you want to have a look at what we're doing, if you want to free Palestine from Hamas, you can definitely join our party. I think it's Free Palestine. Well, it's not our party. I'm just a member of it. But you can definitely join that party, and you'll find out information about that. So definitely do that. Thrown within. Underrated comment. Rukshan, I like you, and that's all that matters. Everyone else is worthless, mate. That's all that matters to me as well. Guys, thank you. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your feedback and criticism. I'll see you all next time on Rukshan On X. Have a good night, everyone. Take care. And if you're watching from around the world, thanks for joining in as well.